These poems can be kind of difficult because they were written at a time after the time from about 1987 to 97 and later. So during that time, just to give you background, my daughter Mariama died in 1987. In 1988, I had a stillborn son, Armand. And then my marriage broke up in 93, 94. And then in 97, both of my parents died within 2 weeks of each other. So I was like, I was reeling. And so in some ways, I didn't know what to do. So I just started, all these feelings were churning and just, they bubbled up and I started writing. And interestingly enough, as things have settled down, I'm not writing poetry much anymore. I think it's probably a good sign. But anyway, I think these poems are like little life rafts that really helped me through what was really unbearable. So the first poem I wrote is 1988. And just to give you a little background, we were out camping in Southern California, and I took a walk in the woods. And I call this poem Lone Star. Last night, as I was out walking, I looked up and saw one lone star amidst many, many stop twinkling. Just for a split second, or so it seemed. But I think I know what I saw. Suddenly, in that small moment, I find myself mourning my beautiful daughter, 1 year dead. From out of nowhere, tears spring to my eyes like baptismal waters splashing the face of a newborn baby. And then a rush of grief, frightening and powerful, catapults me into the deepest sorrow, and then to prayer. For myself first, and for all human creatures who hurt. Finger-like threads of compassion lace my heart like shimmering stars glowing in a blue-black night. This next poem is called Whose Mariama Am I? Whose Mariama am I? Sometimes I wonder whether a soul in the world loves me as I loved my beautiful daughter, Mariama. Is there someone whose life my presence has totally transformed, as Mariama transformed mine? Is there someone whose path has slanted in an unimagined direction as a result of crossing mine? When I have died as she died, is there someone who will weep with longing for my flesh, no longer warm and melting in their arms? Is there someone who aches that my laughter will no longer lighten their sorrows, that my tears will no longer dampen the shoulder of their starched white shirt? Is there a heart that will wince at the remembrance of my suffering, even the teensiest sadness? Who will feel that a life is now an unimaginable expanse of gray when I have gone? And who will question in a loud, beleaguered voice the very meaning of a world without me in it? Will someone pray for me as I prayed for Mariama and implore the angels to nestle this gentle Halimah in their soft, wide wings? I love my daughter Mariama like that, but I can't help wondering, God, as I round the bend of middle age, of old age, whose Mariama am I? This poem arises from an experience that I had when I went in the middle of all this, I went to Indonesia. And this is pretty soon after I lost a stillborn son. And I sort of had the question at the beginning of my first latihan in Indonesia, what was that about? And so then I went and did latihan, and I forgot about the question, like you do sometimes. And as I was just finishing up my latihan and getting very quiet at the end, this little boy flew right next to my head in a little biplane, sort of like a Snoopy plane. And he looked over at me and he said, well, I needed some months in your womb for the latihan. And that's it. He just flew off, So this poem is sort of inspired by that receiving. Left Behind, it's called. Left behind. I am the one left behind, sitting quietly, waiting in vain, while you go off on your adventures, slaying beasts and forging rivers, climbing high stony mountains, and quelling devils with a mighty silver sword. I am the one left behind, waiting for word, any word from your world, crying softly late at night in my still square room. While you fly off into the next world, twinkling enticingly on the edge of the universe, shooting past stars and planets and cavernous black holes with dazzling speed. I am the one left behind to face the wreckage of leavings, sweeping up the broken pieces of my heart with a small, angry broom. Sometimes I imagine all the adventures I too will take when my eyes are no longer blinded by tears and my body no longer frozen in rage and sorrow. I will swing freely like a trapeze artist, somersaulting 2 and 3 times in midair, eyes glistening and heart pounding as my hand stretches out, just at the last possible moment, of course, to catch the second swing arching high above the net before a stunned, admiring crowd. But just for now, I'm the one left behind, plodding along on very solid ground, contenting myself with the feel of warm earth on the soles of bare feet, the smell of the star jasmine trellis just outside the door, and the sound of a voice calling my name from across the room. The next poem I call The Ladies at Trinity Church, and there was a little church that was just around the corner from my home in San Diego, in Escondido. And so I would walk over there occasionally and participate in the service. It seems odd that I, an Islamic woman, find myself this sun-drenched Wednesday morning, drawn here to this very Christian, crucifix-filled, stained glass church, prostrating myself in prayer as I await the wafer and the wine, surrounded by a bevy of gray-haired, pious old ladies, beaming at me benevolently with their sweet, wrinkled faces. The gentleness of the Christ, that Lamb of God, is the consolation I crave now. I need to cry freely, tears streaming down my cheeks and running like little torrents down my arms into the blue carpeted ground of this holy place. I need the prayers of those cherubic minister, and the touch of those dry, wrinkled hands as the old lady surreptitiously slip mounds of Kleenex into my damp lap. Somehow the gleaming sword of Islamic justice and righteousness cannot comfort this very young and very broken heart of mine, and cannot console my bereft body that only 2 weeks ago nestled so sweetly in your perfidious arms. Now, this next poem came when I moved up to Claremont. I moved from San Diego to Claremont because I was finishing up my degree. And it's very philosophical, I think. I like it. It's called Meditations on a Dead Twig. So Linnell and I have something in common. Surrounded by the semi-tropical opulence of the palms and bougainvilleas and bottlebrush trees of Southern California, these rows of bare-limbed, barren cherry trees exude a gray-white serenity, etching themselves harmoniously against the backdrop of this cold winter morning sky. They speak quietly about the tiny green leaves, small as a child's fingernail, that will pattern their gray branches. They speak softly of patience and hope. But what of this dead twig abandoned beneath the tree? A more enterprising soul might gather this twig for firewood. Birds might find it a perfect piece for a new nest. Or perhaps an old Native American woman once wove a twig basket for collecting wild grasses. Nature is, after all, the ultimate recycler. As I lift the dead twig off the ground, its last dried leaf falls unceremoniously. And it seems now just an old twig that has lost all its leaves. No more becoming, just being. Everything stripped away as in those gray moments when every attachment is stripped away and you are just who you are and nothing more. Do you imagine the living limb mourns the loss of its leaves as we mourn our losses? And do you imagine hearing little sighs of regret as it falls to twig? Or does it remember willy-nilly after the fact that even losses nourish? I suppose it doesn't really matter, does it? That which is stripped away like this dead twig has its own essential beauty. The panoply of white and gray shadings, the small darkened charcoal scars where its leaves once clung so tenaciously. This next poem has a little bit to do with something I received during this period of time in my Layiham, which was very helpful to me. And it was this really like a voice saying, Halimah, you have to go through the center of your grief. And if you can do that, you'll become more human. So you'll see how that fits this poem right now. It was just interesting receiving because I thought I was going through the center of the grief, but after I had that receiving, I realized that there's so many ways we wiggle out of, or at least I wiggled out of, just facing it. It's very, very hard. This is called the double dare, my tears and I. Lately, no matter what the time of day, I'm always a split second away from my tears now. Like heavily scented sandalwood oil, they linger behind my eyelids, pressing on my temples, enveloping my head in a rush of warm water. Even after a giant whoop of laughter, they're present now, like air, just waiting for me to feel their languid softness. I admit I used to run away, ducking out at their first tentative knock on my heart. Quick to the TV, to the shops, to the phone, to work, to prayer. But they pursued me frenetically like an obsessed lover. So now we've broken through all the barriers to intimacy, my tears and I. We're incredibly close. Like that old friend from childhood, the ones who always double dared me to jump off the highest diving board at the Venetian pool. Splash! The clear water caresses cold like shined silver. That wild and lonely leap. into a wall of blue liquidity. It stuns my body into a numbed and terrible meltdown. Plunging deeper and deeper into the pool, I hover almost too quietly near the smooth, rocky bottom, lolling like an infant in its mother's womb, invisible hands gently kneading tiny, moist limbs and lips. Suddenly, I'm dissolved completely into a golden amniotic fluid, waiting to be reborn. This is a poem based on a dream that I had about my grandmother. And it's called The Icon, a vision of my grandmother. When I saw your face in a dream 30 years after your death, puffed and swollen with weeping, I thought, that's no human face. That's the face of grief itself. The woman I had known as a little girl, hidden. Your personality was so submerged in this oceanic emotion that you were no longer you. For a moment, your ordinary white-haired Slavic face disappeared, and I gazed in wonder upon sorrow herself. I had never seen this grief before, a mask molded out of red, raw feeling. Shocked mindless by such intensity of feeling, only a primitive prayer rumbles within. Are there times in all of our lives when who we are is not really visible? In an unguarded moment, we present the image of unbearable sorrow, excruciating anger, or sadness. No longer our face, but now the face of an icon, imbued with an extraordinary alchemical magic, capable of ravishing the ordinary human heart. Certainly, this imaged icon of my grandmother, like a slivered second of heightened reality, groans like a bow across the strings of my being, as if I had accidentally stumbled off a high cliff. Life rushes through my free-falling body, and that rushing itself calls out wildly, frantically, oh God, oh God, oh God, that's no face. That's the face of grief itself. This is a little bit easier for us. It's called Buried Alive. It was on the teaser. And it was just a memory that came to me. But one summer, when I was a little girl, my mother and I traveled to Cape Cod. There on the beach, I played with the older girls for hours, letting them bury me right up to the neck in the warm sand. And they poured and patted white sand all over my small body until all you could see was a miniature mountain with a tiny dark head protruding. With all the girls watching and laughing, I would spend a few minutes straining mightily against this warm fortress, forcing the small cracks in the sand structure into large open chasms until the edifice crumbled. Once free, I would run around whooping for joy, and then abruptly lie down and beg to be rewombed again. What a comfort to feel those warm, patting hands and the weight of sand pressing on every part of my child's body. And what a thrill to kick off its weight and break free. Sometimes, even now, I long to loll around in the dirt, just me, naked, round, and soft, still longing for the reassurance of warm, dark earth, still longing for the feeling of a mother, and still longing to break free. This next very short poem is a poem that came in when I was in Colombia, outside of Bogota. I was visiting a school doing my research for my dissertation. And the director of the school, Monica Ramirez, invited me to come with her family to a village where she had a villa. and she brought her daughter Alexandra. And so this is dedicated to Alexandra Ramirez. And today we went out for a walk, you and I, ambling down a tiny dirt road in the middle of the afternoon on a warm, sticky May day. In the middle of a small village in Colombia, over an hour south of Bogota. You held my hand so firmly and trustingly. Once again, I was restored to being a mother. Together, we explored the green fields on the side of the road. We saw 2 calves, one black and a smaller white one, a cream-colored goat, and a large pond used to irrigate surrounding gardens. We stopped on our walk to listen to the sounds of the stream as it rushed the water to a nearby nursery with rows and rows and rows of lush tropical plants. As we made our way back to the house in the village, we counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Butterflies flitting in and out of the beneficent yellow flowers. Far from my own home in this strange land, I wonder why your small brown hand resting in mine feels so familial. So this poem was written in when I went to Indonesia to sort of recover, and I took a flight from Jakarta to Bali. I stayed in Bali for a few days. And then I took a flight from Bali to Timor, the island of Timor, and then we dropped down and flew into Darwin, Australia, where I had a really close friend there who I wanted to visit. And I went around Australia. It was a really fantastic trip. So this poem arose from an experience I had when I was in Darwin. And it's called "This is the Day That God Hath Made." In a large park that nestles on the edge of the Timor Sea, 10 black egrets pecked at the green grass, just near the entrance of a large welcoming chapel, shaped like a sailing ship with vast glass windows on every side. I had arrived too late from shopping for the noontime communion. The priest had already left. So instead, I flung my body over the communion rail to let prayer come to me by itself. At first, I just felt my hands open and relax. I felt the flop of my arms on the polished wooden railings and the softness of the crimson velvet cushion under my knees. My breathing slowed and deepened. The tension and resistance ebbed away. I felt the flop of my arms on the polished wooden railings and the softness of the crimson velvet cushion under my knees. My breathing slowed and deepened. The tension and resistance ebbed away. Sorrow and anger and frustration and disappointment began to flow like 4 curled leaves on a quiet river winding down to the sea. A wordless prayer from me to my maker. It seemed that just who I was at that moment became my offering. As I took a deep, full breath, a small voice inside my heart began reciting in cadenced tones. This is the day that God hath made. This is the world that God hath made. I am the creature that God hath created. Over and over again, that childlike voice sang to me, lulling the cells of my body into a liquid peace. I wonder where I will find any greater haven than just this yes. Yes to all that is within and without. God is not just in me in some small light-filled sanctuary, but I exist utterly in God. So this is written during Ramadan, you can tell. I visited my good friend Halimah Polk in Darwin, Australia, where I had this sublime experience. Later, while staying in her house, I was amazed to find a plaque with a copy of the psalm, "This is the day that God hath made." Had I seen it before my experience in the church? Or did my experience in the chapel foretell my reading the psalm? I don't know. It's really interesting. Now, I'm reading the next poem just as a kind of interesting to me as I look back, because it sort of foretells, as you'll see, my movement into watercolor and art. And it's called The Garden of Love. Quand je vais au jardin, jardin d'amour, je pense seulement de toi, mon amour. When I step into my garden of love, I think only of you, my beloved, and the wildflowers creeping everywhere, small hot pink untamed fuchsia, bunches of yellow daisies, and the bright orange paintbrush. The bark of a twisted manzanita is a cordovan patina, and wild sweet peas wind through its blossoms. Rains have moistened everything into blossom. When I step into my garden of love, I think only of you, my beloved, and gazing for long moments into your eyes, and touching your hand and the soft flesh on your neck. I imagine kissing your lips, soft and moist and open to me. Oh, we cannot get enough of those kisses. Like the breath of angels, so soft and tender, so completely unresisting. The words woven through these damp caresses are simply prayers to our Creator in gratitude for this residue of heaven on earth. Light vibrates within us like the trill of a carved bamboo flute at dawn, a place inside that could never rest, finds peace. Quand je vais au jardin, jardin d'amour, je pense seulement de toi, mon amour. I mean, to me, the images in this poem remind me of the watercolors that I started painting about 8 or 9 years later. Okay, and finally, now, so here's the painting. So I painted the picture. It's called it's Las Tres Palmeras, this painting. And then I wrote a poem about it. So it's just following on the heels of the other poem. It's just interesting to me. It works like that. Las Tres Palmeras. Palm fronds standing on end, wild with golden joy, small birds and lizards and caterpillars, even iguanas, take cover amidst the orange, gold, lime, and purple leaves, dreaming up small dwellings nestled safely behind the hula-skirted grass trunks. Can you imagine the sparrows flitting about? A stillness abides within this stand of palms. And if you're here for even a bit, time might seem to stop altogether. This is a place that can remind us to pray. This is a place to pray for peace in our hearts. This is a place to pray for more love in our lives and in our world. Here we might entreat the universe for a grand reconciliation. What is your prayer? That's it. I'm done. Okay. Here I am. Okay.
Wow, that was wonderful, Halimah. I'd like to start, if I could, since I'm one of the few men here in the audience.
I know. The only man.
Theo Salisbury is here as well.
Oh, good.
Was with us.
Yeah. So, wow, that's an incredible sharing. it's a privilege, is what I feel, Halimah, to hear these poems of yours. They're intensely personal, and I marvel at the capacity of your heart to love, and at the same time to feel loss. I mean, it's really beautiful. And in terms of the poetry, I love your the imagery that you use. Even the imagery of the dead twig somehow seemed to glow in the way that you described it as a metaphor. So those are just my attempts at giving you some feedback and saying thank you. So what we're going to do is we'll take turns. If you want to speak, just put your hand up. I may not see you immediately, but you will all get a chance to talk. So Halimah, if you want to unmute yourself, go right ahead.
I am unmuted, and really the reason I put my hand up first is because I have another Zoom in a couple of minutes, and so I do have to leave. But
Speak now.
well, Halimah,
Thank you for coming.
I wondered how you felt when you were reading those poems, because I'm going to cry now just talking about how much they touched me, and I had to stop and get a tissue, and you know, they were just so meaningful. Knowing you for as long as I have, having roomed with you many times at Subud events, and loving you so much. I love you even more. And they were so beautiful, so real, so true. So how did you feel when you were reading those?
I was really feeling, if you forgive my honesty, I was really regretting doing this, in promising to do this, even though something inside me said, go ahead and do it. It was very hard. It was really hard because it just brought it all back.
That's what I was feeling.
It
So
brought it
I
all back, and I
applaud
thought, well, I thought, well, maybe it's of some value, you know, to somebody else, but it was hard. It was hard for me, and I felt a lot of the feelings that I felt during that period of time.
Yeah.
So to tell you the truth, it was hard, and I said to myself, you know, as I was preparing, never again. I'm done. I'm done
But
with this.
it's kind of like how a lot of people don't want to go into therapy because it brings a lot of these feelings back. But I, for one, and I'm sure I say it for everybody, I'm really glad you did, because it was so meaningful. So thank you. But I do have to go. Love you guys all. Thanks
I love
so
you.
much
Thanks
for doing
coming. I'm
this.
so glad you're here. So
Bye,
glad you're
Andrew.
here.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Halimah.
much.
So next, who else would like to? I see Lydia Burton. Lydia, why don't you go now?
Hey, Lydia. Yeah.
You have to unmute yourself first. There you go.
Now I'm okay. All right.
You're okay.
Well, I want to thank you very much for sharing those poems. I think the fact that you feel you'll never do it again just shows the intensity and the depth of your, I'm stumbling for words now myself, but honesty, I guess I would say, that is the price the poet pays for every creative expression. And I really am holding on to what you said, that poems are life rafts. And you don't know, but by reading a poem like this, it could be a life raft for somebody else. So you really have to set aside the personal, and it's so difficult to do. And I think even within poetry itself, there's the personal and the universal. And it's when we go from the personal to the universal, we transcend our own sensitivities. And you've just birthed something and let it go in the world, which is so incredibly beautiful. And I'm just very happy to be able to share that experience with you. And there are fragments of what you've written that will stay with you, even if you never read again, but I hope you do. You know, just little fragments, the wreckage of leaving, nature is the ultimate recycler, but even losses nourish. That is so beautiful. So thanks a million for giving yourself to this group and sharing today. It really means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. And now we'll go to Cecile Wadi.
Oh, yeah. Where's my girl?
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Good. Okay. Thank you so much, Halimah. I feel as though my heart has been massaged. It's a wonderful feeling. I won't run off at the mouth, but there are 4 things that stood out for me. One of them is, whose Mariama am I? And the Christian experience, and the word splash when that happened, and all that followed, and the grief of the grandmother. I remember with my own maternal grandmother, her husband died before her, and I remember standing at my grandpa's grave, and I remember her, it was just like all her life went out of her at that moment and into the grave with him. So it touched that in me, but I do really feel very grateful that you chose to share and keep your commitment to be here. And maybe I'll email you about those 4 points.
Thank you, Cecile Wati.
Yeah.
It means a lot
God
to me.
bless you.
Thank
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to go to Maria Baker next.
Hey, Maria.
Hi, Halimah.
Hi,
Thank you.
babe.
It was really, really moving. And, you know, your vulnerability was just right there. Beautiful. But what I want to say touched me was, of course, you know, that when Mariama was an infant and right before her surgery, I received it to baptize her. And we did that. Has it ever, I mean, because she was a Christian, you know,
Right.
and so your Christian experiences were part of Mariama. Did that ever occur to you that the Christianity flowing in there through you?
Well, certainly she brought me back to Christianity, didn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, she really did. Because I mean, I didn't say this, but I subsequently, I don't say I leave Islam, but I subsequently went back and joined a Christian church.
Uh-huh.
It just was just what I needed at the time, and still need at the time. And it offers a kind of a community that Islam here in the United States doesn't offer. And also, right now I don't feel like going. But when I'm in Latihan, for example, and you all may have this experience, I feel like I'm a Jew, I'm a Muslim, and I'm a Christian. So but to practice it. But I think you're absolutely right. And you know, after you baptized her, Maria, I used to take her to church.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I used to take her on Easter and Christmas. We would go to church, and of course, everybody loved her. She'd come in her little, you know, wheelchair, and people would go crazy because she's so pretty.
Yeah.
So beautiful. So yeah. I think she brought me back to Christianity, or brought me to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was so hesitant to even approach you and Rashad and say, I received, but I sure get to Islamic parents, you know.
But I remember that moment so clearly when you baptized her. And I remember Mariama, she really responded. She went like this.
Yeah.
You know, she really responded. Anyway.
Okay. Anyway, just wanted to share that. So
thank you so much. And thank you for being the person that baptized her, and you were at the birth.
Yeah.
So that's so meaningful to me.
Thank you very much, Maria. We'll go now to Rema. Can you unmute yourself?
Rema.
Yes, hi. Once again, Halimah, I want to say how brave I think you are. And thank you so much for sharing these. What really struck me was how much each individual poem was so much a very separate moment. It felt so intensely immediate and isolated, yet all of them together created an amazing sense of your journey. And the fact that you read them in order of your experiencing them, I believe, for the most
Yeah.
part, really enhanced that for me. And it made me think of something I'm sort of meditating on lately. Friend sent me something about the inevitability of disintegration of selfhood in some experiences, and I could really see what that meant in your life in a way, and your recreation. I've got to say that I wrote down something about each of your poems, but I'll share that separately. We don't have time, but the one I really connected to was the one about the ladies of Trinity Church.
Oh, yeah.
I went to a Trinity Church, Episcopal church in San
we all?
Francisco during the height of the AIDS crisis, or the beginning actually. And it had a very large, it was a small church, and it was divided between the little old gray-haired ladies and the young men in their 20s and 30s. And a few of us sort of newlyweds who were just finding this place. And those little old ladies who had the rumble sales and who were there kind of silently supporting us all. I now feel like one of them. I feel like I'm among the chorus, but I see how essential they all are in our lives. I mean, it's like
that's really true. Yes.
Greek
Yes.
chorus. So thank you.
That's like the Greek chorus. Yeah.
Thank you, Rayma. A number of you
Thank
have
you,
your
Rayma.
hands up, and I'm going to get to you all eventually. But I'm going to go with Latifa first. Latifa Brett.
Hi, Latifah
Hi,
Brett.
Halimah. Thank you so
Welcome.
much for all those wonderful images and feelings. And yeah, one that's staying with me mostly is when you describe something about diving into the water from the high,
That's one of my favorites. I really like that.
yeah, deep diving. That's what happened for me today, deep diving and spreading out with all your precious feelings. And yeah, very healing for me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Latifah.
Thanks, Latifa. We'll go to Leanna Harrison next.
Yes, as untoward as it is to mention this, I feel like I've been a groupie of yours. So we're in the big testing. There's people everywhere. They're dividing in groups by the topics, and I just go, I don't care what the topic is. I'm heading to your group to test with you, and the group would be testing something. We were assigned something different, but it would turn into creativity, testing where creativity comes within us. It was always just wonderful. So I was so moved getting to know you even further right now. And as much as it's painful, I want to share the probably a third of us have maybe lost a child through miscarriage or so in this group. And so I needed some months in your womb to receive the Ladihan. That was just so moving, that there's a purposefulness. I also saw the grief you felt on your first loss, but your son's loss seemed to have, you had a beautiful image of a joyful image of this little soul coming and visiting you in the Ladihan. And so I think it kind of, I'm happy that soul was there to ameliorate the pain of your first loss, I feel. Also, the hovering at the bottom, dissolving, waiting to be born in the bottom of the pool. I was in the pool with you. It was really rich, those images and that feeling. So I really, as much as I cried through several, I so appreciated this. And your bravery I did like, I have to click her name, what Lydia Burton said about maybe that's the price one pays to share such a gift with all of us, is the discomfort that maybe you felt today. But I thank you for being brave and
I
doing
didn't feel
so.
discomfort reading, but in preparing to read, I thought, oh God, what have I said? What have I done?
Because you did, you were very confident during the reading. Anyway, thank you so much for the images that also will be with me for my lifetime.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leanna. That was very moving. We're going to go to Christiana next. You have to unmute yourself, Christiana. There you go.
Yeah, thank you, Halimah. It was really wonderful.
Thank you, Christiana, for being here.
Yeah, well, I'm finally parked, so I can talk and look. I've been going through a year of grief since I've lost my mother, and then my godmother, and then another friend of theirs, and I've been involved in a grief support group, and none of the poems or anything anybody said has been as deep and as rich and has resonated with me as much as your poems. It just means so much that somebody else has stepped into that well of despair, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, you know, that grief journey. And I just want to thank you for it. And yes, you know, it's a life raft and it's a connector, and, you know, sharing our vulnerability is always tough when we're the ones that are doing it. But those of us who are able to experience that sharing, it's very rich and powerful. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Christiana. Thanks for coming.
One question. I see it's recorded, and there's one poem about, what was it, longing for the mother and independence. I can't remember.
Oh, that was buried in sand. That was the one about being buried at the seashore in sand.
Yeah.
When I was a kid. Yeah. All these poems are up on my website, and I'll send you.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes, send the link out. Yeah. Okay, great.
Good.
Thank you. I'm going to go now. Bye.
Thank you so much for being here.
You just share the name of your website again. I've been on it and read it fully, but with other people. You don't have to type it in. Just state it.
I can put it up there.
Hi, darling. Oops.
Who's darling? Who's hi, darling?
There. Hi, folks. Please just raise your hand and I'll recognize you in turn if you want to talk, okay? And if you aren't recognized right away, I will get to everybody. So please be patient. Since somebody's raised the question, we've taped today's session, the reading and the Q&As, the comments section. And we put this up on the SICA YouTube page, probably in a couple of days, it'll be up there. All the other Zoomuse stuff. And in the description to the video, we'll be putting Halimah's website address.
Oh, okay.
And if you want me to put the text of the poems in the description as well, we can put them there, Halimah.
Well, they're on the website. So if you want the text of the poems, they can go on the website. There's maybe one or two poems that I read that are not on the website, but most of them.
Well, I can put those in the description for the YouTube video if you want. It's really up to Halimah, up to you rather. Okay, so back to comments and questions. I'll go down here to Miriam Ramsey next. Go ahead, Miriam.
That was just so beautiful, Halimah. I really thank you for sharing that. It touched me in so many places. I actually felt my heart getting wider, you know, or realizing how wide a heart has to get to face the things that we have to face, you know, in this lifetime. And especially the part about your son just needing to be in your womb for a while, since I did lose a little girl like that. So who I still talk to, but
that's great.
Understand, you know.
I'm too mad at him. I'm too mad at him, you know. I
I
just need,
want to thank you. And it did help. It helps other. I know it's hard to share that, but it helped me. So I want to thank you for being brave.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Who else wanted to share? Okay, I'll go to Melanie Branchflower. Melanie, unmute yourself, please.
So thank you, Halimah. I know there were some years when we saw each other a lot and used to share our own our losses, both of them.
Yeah.
But I've never done the kind of soul searching or things going through all that like you have, and I really appreciate hearing that. I tend not to be very creative at times, and I think listening to some of these things makes me realize I should try to be a little bit more so. But anyway, the poems were beautiful, and for me, a lot to contemplate, even at this
Thank you.
late day, with after my own loss many years ago. Also, now I forget what I was going to say. Anyway, thank you very much. Love you lots, and really
Thank you.
appreciate it. And I'll look
Thank you.
forward to rereading these poems too.
I mean,
Thank
this
you,
is
Melanie. We can later if you want. Okay. So who else have I missed? Layla?
Lalia.
You have to,
Hi,
Lalia,
Lalia.
please unmute yourself.
So
Well,
great that you came.
thank you for forwarding this, because when I saw this, I thought, oh my gosh, I miss Halimah so much. It's been how long since you've come this way?
I know, 2 years or 3
I mean,
years.
oh my goodness. So I'm like, I'll do anything to have some contact with you. So anyway, I didn't know this side of you. I didn't know about your poems. I knew about your art, and of course your work and your just general brilliance and fun and love of life. I don't have any specifics. I mean, I was very moved, but what I noticed was this sense of peace and calm and this wonderful place that I was being. I think part of it was the message of your poems, but also your voice, how you read them was part of it also. And it reminded me of Babak saying that true culture touches people's souls, their jivas. I don't know if that's what I was feeling, but I was feeling this wonderful place. I was just in this wonderful space for myself. So thank you for that wonderful thing. And I miss you.
Thank you, Layla. We'll go now.
Thank you for coming.
Halimah, my
It's for
sweet
you.
friend. I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you so much for coming, Sierra. And you're such a support.
I'm going to start to cry again. I saw the progression through the poems, and there are certain ones that I will make a comment on. But in the overall picture, when we became friends, good friends, it was with the help of Katerina
Right.
in London at the helpers meeting. And that was such a powerful time, those sessions that the three of us had together. And so healing for me. So grateful that you were there. And I went to while I'm crying now just for the whole of it, but when you were reading about the ladies of Trinity Church is when I started crying while you were reading. And all I could think of was our sweet friend, Sonia.
Oh, yeah.
And how important that whole Christian era was for us.
Absolutely.
So that the poem, Whose Mariama Am I? I think that's a universal response to loss. You know, was very, it's so poignant. And the left behind, waiting for word from you.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness. My goodness.
We know that one.
Well, yeah, we do. We do. And then I love the trapeze imagery that you had at one point, grasping in thin air for the bar to get you to the next place. And you, this wasn't part of a poem, but you said it, and I think it's totally true. We wiggle out of facing grief. And that's true on every level. We're all doing it now with the whole circumstances in the world and with the pandemic. We hide away, you know, until our soul won't let us anymore. And then you just have to get there. And I love the image of diving in the water, going down to the bottom of the pool, and the sense of the fluid surrounding you so that you could be reborn. And in the time that I've known you since, I mean, I actually met you before London, but you don't remember me. I remember you in Indonesia.
But I'll never forget London. That experience was like, yeah, it was like one of those.
Totally amazing.
That was amazing.
She was so kind to us. Oh my God. Where else? The grandmother, you know, absolutely amazing. Absolute puffy face of grief, swollen, puffy. I feel like I have one right now. Not as wrinkled, maybe as your grandma.
You're an icon.
Yeah, right. And it was, I loved how you progressed through and you brought us back to our current life, you know, and your current life. I loved the child buried in the warmth of the sun and adoring the feeling of being patted and made warm and friendly, and then just begging for it after you were able to squirm out of it, begging for another version of it. How absolutely wonderful. Rewombed again. That was the phrase that I remember and wrote down to remember, because I can't trust myself to remember anything anymore. Anyway, I love you very much. You've been so kind to me through the years, and
you to me, Sierra.
Well, that's what friendship is.
Yeah.
And it, you know, you don't see each other, and then you're there. You know, and we've all had that experience with people.
Right.
And I think that happens in the whole world, but I think it's even deeper when we connect on a spiritual level, as so many of us have intimately within the Ladihan.
Yeah.
And I think that your doing this is a yet another healing step for you.
Maybe so.
And I think you'll I don't know, have a drink, you know, do something to relieve the little tension that's built up on you here.
Right.
But thank you, just thank you. And you are so loved.
Thank you, Sierra. Thank you. I think I will have a drink.
I know you.
I think I will have a drink.
Thank you, Sierra. We're going to go to Erica Bell now. Erica.
Hi, Erica. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, Halimah.
Hi, honey.
My dear. I want to say that everything has been said by these beautiful ladies. Everything that I responded to, you've all already spoken about. And what comes to me to say now is just that it is true that over this past year, if nothing else, it's a universal experience to relive your life, to go back and
That's right.
go over everything. That's part of the gift of this pandemic that we've been through, is this re-examination. And what I wish for you, and thank you so much for going through this, but the gift, or a gift, one of them, from this process that you've gone through today, is I want you to be able to go back to the natural joy, total joy that you felt as a child in that sand, and just responding to what nature around you, and to bring that little girl back to you, because I know you've been working on more joy in your life. And I think you took a big step toward the release of anything, any cap that's been on that is blown off now, lady. That's all I have to say, really.
Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, I'm listening.
Thank you, Erica.
Theo.
Eleora, go ahead.
Oh.
Yes, unmute.
Hi, Eleora. Thank you so much for being here.
Halimah. Oh my God, honestly. Everybody said everything that I could possibly say. But I want you to know that I could listen to you all day long, and tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. I really feel that you spoke directly to me, even though my experiences haven't been the same. But it was so wide and so personal. And if you're never going to do this again, I thank God I was here. I'm so glad I didn't miss it. Honestly, it was wonderful, Halimah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. It means a lot to me. Theo. Where's Theo?
Theo, do you want to say something?
Yeah.
Theo, I just wanted to ask you, was it just too much being a male in the middle of all this?
Well, I kind of feel to ask the rather snarky question, where are all the men? Are they a bunch of wimps?
I don't know.
It's only Andrew and and
I know.
That's sad, you know.
I know.
That's sad, but well, yeah, I have a few things to say. First of all, the effect of your poems was cumulative. As you read, and as the progression that you went through became more apparent, the depth and the power and the weight, I might say, of what you experienced and were conveying to us increased. And by the end, it was a big thing. And I feel, you know, we've known each other for a long time, but not well, because we haven't really been in the same center since Palo Alto back in the 60s.
Right.
Although there have been a few moments when we kind of touched bases. We had dinner together once in Fresno many years ago.
I remember.
Near the time when you were coming out of the deeper part, or maybe going into the deeper part of this, as a kind of accumulated. And then there was a moment that was really special to me, but I don't know if you remember it, at the '96 Congress, National Congress in Spokane, which was kind of a dress rehearsal for the World Congress the next year. But at any rate, but I'm glad. And now you're clear over in Florida. I'm still in California, far away, which is a little disappointing, you know. But I want to say this. I could mention specific poems. I think it was Lydia Burton who mentioned the second one about wanting to know. Every one of us wants to know, do we matter?
Right.
Do we matter, you know? And I wanted to ask you, and then I'll have a final comment. When you wrote that poem, when you were reading it today, did you think of your parents and how much you might have meant to them?
No, no, I didn't. I didn't think of them. You mean when I asked the question, who's Mariam am I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I imagine that you were as important to them as your two lost children were to you and are to you.
It would be nice to feel that way, but I don't feel that. It may be true, but I don't feel it.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I don't feel that about my parents, at least.
Right.
Or maybe my mother, but that's hard to say. But anyway, I just wondered. Here's a very strange thing for me. I feel as if I learned, I was going to make this comparison too. The most powerful evocation of grief I've read, besides hearing this today from you, is A Grief Observed by C.S. Lewis. I don't know if you've ever read
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Amazing book. I felt strangely today as if I was learning for the first time what it is to be a woman, to have the body and the heart and the mind of a woman who's gone through all the things that you have gone through. Certain aspects of that a man can never directly experience. And to get Freudian for just a minute, I've always thought penis envy was a bunch of bullshit, except insofar as it reflected the patriarchy and the wish for women to have as much power as men, which they should have. But I think womb envy is a real thing, and I've got it. I will die never having had the experience of carrying and giving birth to a child, which to me seems like a huge disappointment, you know. But you brought something to me that was unique. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you. Theo, I was saying Richard.
Yeah, well,
I put you on the spot just because I wanted to get kind of, it's all so female, all the experiences and everything. And I mean, I didn't even invite men, you know what I mean? That's one of the reasons there's so few are here. You came because you're a loyal Zoom user, but I didn't invite any men because I was feeling uncomfortable. That's why I was asking you, how did you respond? And anyway, so thank you.
Well, it was a privilege. It was a privilege to hear this. You really
So
let us in.
I'll send the guys that I know to the Zoomuse, to the video that you're going to put up.
Good idea. Yeah, you should.
Yeah, that's a good. Because my brothers would like to be here, but I just thought it would be too much for them.
Maybe it would, but I didn't think so. It was a lot, but it was good.
Yeah. Anyway,
if I could just
thank you so much.
Maybe you can send the recordings to your brothers.
That's right. I'm going to. Absolutely, I'm going to. And your comments would be, and they would be. And I want to say something about Zoomuse in general. And I know not everybody's been on, but this is the most. If one has to be initiated into reading poetry, this is the place, because everybody's so wonderful. Not only to me, but to all the people that read. You know, it's very encouraging and very supportive. It's great. So if I had to do it, this is a place to do it.
Hi, Halimah. This is the point where I bring up the book again, Zoomuse Poetry.
Good.
Stories. I hope everybody gets their copy. And Cecilia Wadi has reminded me that when you order it online, please, with your postage, get the tracking postage so you'll be able to know
and where do you order it again?
It's on
Amazon?
Lulu.com.
Okay, Lulu.com.
Lulu.com. I'm sorry, I was being a little facetious in terms of trying to push the book.
No, I think it's time to go.
What I know I need a drink too, but what I wanted to say before we all quit, Halimah, I just, and there are a few other people who have some additional comments. I want to echo Theo's response that it was a privilege, and you know, we all have our own life experiences, and so different things that you say resonate in us, call forth our own experience. And what really hit me was your description of how you felt you were told that you had to go into the pain, follow it head on. I'm not sure exactly how you phrase
Go through the center. Go through the center.
Go through the center. And you know, I'm an elderly male. I turned 70 this year, so as Eliora says, I'm now officially old.
I had to change one of my poems.
Like a lot of men, maybe it's general for men and women, but certainly for men of my age, I'm trying to confront my life, because I feel that a lot of my life has been lived by avoiding facing it head on. I'm trying to come to peace with that and to make sense of it, which is certainly doesn't do a lot for your ego. So we'll go now to Leanna Harrison. Leanna, go ahead.
Just a quick commercial for Halimah's webpage. Her webpage is a delight because it's three things. It's not just poetry. It's also her watercolors, and you can see those develop over time. And it's interviews. You called them interviews with Ibu, but times that when you were living in Chalandak. And they're all very rich stories, poems, and art. It's wonderful. So I'm just saying you would enjoy it anytime with the web's page.
Thank you, Leanna. It's a wonderful advertisement.
Oh, well,
You're right.
Endorsement.
I'm going to move in, Leanna. I'm going to move in with you.
You like California, right by Yosemite.
Does
We have a
anyone
guest.
have anything additional that they'd like to say? No?
I want to go get my margarita. I've earned it.
What time is it there?
You sure have, Halimah.
It's 3:30, so I wait a little bit.
Halimah, before we sign off, you want to have the last word?
Well, whoever said that this would be a good experience for me in the long run, I think that was Lydia Burton, is right. This has been very helpful, just because I had so much apprehension about, you know, I'm so completely open in these poems. And it was a good audience. Thank you so much for making me feel so safe. It's very important. And I did feel safe, very safe. So I love you all. Thank you so much for coming. And maybe I won't quit. Well, I'm really liking art because it's not so intense. I'm liking my art a little bit better because it's not so intense.
Well, thank you. And thanks to everybody for joining in today and sharing Halimah's wonderful poetry. So kudos to you, Halimah.
Love you.
Okay, kudos to you. Kudos
See
to
you
my
in 2
friends.
weeks' time with the next Zoomuse session. The next what we're going to have is Paul Nelson, who's the chair of SICA USA. And Paul is going to be talking about a poet
He's good.
who had a big impact on him called Michael McClure. So that's 2 weeks from today. So thank you for everybody for coming.
Okay. Thanks,
Bye.
Andrew. Bye.
Thank you, Andrew.
Pleasure.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.